Here joining me right now to talk more about all of this is Georgia Senator David Perdue, who serves on the Senate Banking and Armed Services Committee. Senator, good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
You are the only former 400 CEO in Congress, and you've also been called President Trump's favorite senator. If the president asked you for your advice on slapping new tariffs on China, what would you tell him?
Well, we've been talking with the president since he was inaugurated about creating a level playing field and having a measured approach about doing that. Look, last year, Maria, he said job one was growing the economy, and we focused on regulations and energy and taxes, and you see the early stages of those results. And now he wants equal access. His instincts are exactly right. We need a level playing field with the rest of the world, and that's what all this is about. And I think we'll see a measured approach going forward. This is not a guy that wants to create isolationism or a trade war, no matter what's been said. But I will tell you this, there are imbalances around the world. I've lived with that most of my career, Maria.
So was it a mistake, though, to initially institute tariffs on the entire aluminum and steel industry, where you're actually seeing, imports into the U.S. Facing these tariffs, versus doing something more specific and, as Paul Ryan said, surgical, specifically targeted at China?
Maria, those of us like me who have lived with this their entire career, I mean, at Reebok we had a matrix, right? We had countries where we made product, we had countries where we sold product, and we were transferring product cross borders all the time. Trade is a matrix. You got countries, you got industries, and you have product categories, and you have to be very careful that the reasons you're putting a tariff in are for the right reasons, like illegal activity of dumping and illegal subsidies. And what this president wants, in addition to that, is parallel access. If they have access to our markets, then we need to have access to their markets.
Right, sure. And at this point, we don't have access to the Chinese market, right? I mean, if a company wants to build a plant in China, first they've got to give up all their technology secrets, and then even then they won't own more than 49% of a joint venture.
Maria, in the last 30 years, actually 40 years, the United States trade policies, our military, and our growing market here has reduced global poverty about 60 to 65%. We brought a couple hundred million people into the 21st century in China because of our growing market. And look, what we've done here, our poverty rate hasn't changed at all in the last 50 years, Maria. So what we are looking at now, the time has come, and this president's standing up to protect American workers, American jobs, and companies to create equal access on a level playing field. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
So what
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please, you go ahead, finish your thought.
Well, I love Larry Kudlow's choice, Maria, because he's a free trader, and yet he knows there are punitive imbalances out there in the world that have harmed American workers. So I think you're going to see a more measured, targeted approach coming out of this White House going forward.
What do you make of this market pushback? Dow Industrials down 250 points yesterday. Public markets are telling the president, stop instigating what potentially could be a trade war.
Maria, I resist interpreting stock market moves on a day-to-day basis, but I will tell you this. I would love to see some time to let the economy breathe with the changes that we've just done. I mean, regulations, energy, taxes, and we just passed yesterday this bipartisan banking bill that will free up over $2 trillion of capital coming out of our small community banks and regional banks. So this economy is humming right now, and it's just in the early stages. I would love to see us have a little time to let that mature as we go to a targeted approach on the imbalances in trade.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the Dodd-Frank changes, the Senate approving some of those changes yesterday, passing a bipartisan measure that eases the rules on small and mid-sized banks. Take us through that, when we might see the bill reach the president's desk. You co-sponsored the bill. It's headed now to the House, where lawmakers say they want to tack on more provisions. When might we expect this to materialize and be on the president's desk for a signage?
Well, first, I want to take a little victory lap. This doesn't happen often. This is why I ran for the United States Senate. You come here to get results. That's what this president wants. And in a bipartisan way, with 17, I believe, Democrats voting for this bill. I'm on the banking committee, and we fought hard in committee to get it out of there. We had amendments on the floor. It was regular order, and we passed a bipartisan bill. This is major. It will free up over $2 trillion of capital in our small community banks and our regional banks, and it will absolutely be stimulative to the ongoing changes that we made in the economy. I hope the House will take it up next week, pass it, get it to the president within a week or two, and let's get this thing signed, because the economy right now is moving. We need that capital.
Does it bring back any unnecessary risks, as the skeptics have said?
We know, I hear that, and I've heard all the speeches on that, but let's go back and review what Dodd-Frank did. Dodd-Frank wrapped up all community banks, all regional banks, with their punitive action on the bigger banks. Let me explain this. The small banks in my community and most communities back home had nothing at all to do with the 08 and 09 financial crisis. And so they got wrapped up in there. And all this does, it's a very measured approach.
Yeah.
It reduces the compliance cost and the regulatory burden, and it frees up. Some estimates are about $2+ trillion in investment capital.
Well, we know that businesses have been sitting on cash for the last decade, Senator, because of all of this rules and regulation, that 95,000 pages of the Federal Registry under President Obama. Let me switch gears, Senator, ask you about your colleague. Senator Rand Paul says he intends to oppose the nominations of Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State and Gina Haspel for the next CIA director. Do you plan to support these nominations?
Well, I do. I like Pompeo. I think it's a great nomination, but I also like Tillerson. I think Tillerson, for the year he was in there, did a great job. We were headed in the right direction. Look, what we've done the last year, Maria, on a political basis internationally, is we have re-engaged.
Yeah.
And I travel the world as a former member of the Foreign Relations Committee, as a member of the Armed Services Committee.
Yes.
Now we're meeting with these heads of state, and what they want is American leadership, American partnership. They want consistency in partnership.
Sure.
And that's what we're seeing today.
Real quick, Senator, do you want to see changes in terms of a phase 2 on the tax plan? You want more tax cuts?
Well, here's what the reality is, and I think the president's relating to this. We said as we were voting on that bill, this is a dynamic situation. It's been 30 years since we made the last change, serious change in the tax policy. The rest of the world is already moving. You know, the UK, Germany, other countries are moving to adjust to what we've just done.
So there is more to come then?
Well, there has to be a dynamic consistency in reviewing our policy and make sure we remain competitive.
Senator, thank you. David Perdue.
Thanks, Maria.
We'll be right back.